Okay, we are reading Masechet Shabbat, the 6th chapter, and Mishnah Gimel, the 3rd Mishnah. Just mentioning here more items or accessories that men or women used to have on them, either on Shabbat or on a regular day. So they mention rings. There are different rings with a seal, a ring without a seal. There's something called kovelet or tzlochit shel palyaton, that is basically a little bag with herbs or perfumes people would carry to exude good smell, and they say that she's not allowed to take it to the public property because she might remove it. And again, we have the same problem. All these things are not things that someone would remove from her body or his body. So this also falls under the category of what I mentioned yesterday. The rabbis were trying to limit the way a woman could look and feel attractive in general. Part of the sort of campaign of modesty. לא יצא האיש לא בסייף ולא בקשת ולא בתריס ולא בעלה ולא ברומח ואם יצא חייב חטאת. רבי אליעזר אומר תכשיטין לו. This is an interesting dispute in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that a man cannot wear on himself to Reshut HaRabim a spear, a bow, a shield, a sword, and Allah. Allah is either a club or the Talmud Yerushalmi calls it diyakran. So it either comes from the Hebrew dakar, something that you could stab with, or it's from the Greek dio, keren, two blades. So it's like the battle axe with two blades. So, I mean, just thinking about that, they're talking about whether you could carry it on Shabbat. That means that people used to go around wearing those on a regular day. Rabbi Eliezer Omer tachshitinan lo. It's for a man. It's considered a beautiful accessory, and it would be interesting, according to Rabbi Eliezer, to ask why don't you let a woman wear a necklace to Reshut HaRabim, right? And you said that she's going to remove it. And a sword, which is much more easy to take the sword out of the sheath and show it to someone else, you say it's okay. So again, you see that the problem was not about taking it, carrying, and showing it to people. The rabbis, though, say, they say this is not recommendable. It's not the having weapons on you. It's not. I mean, it reminds us a little bit about the discussion of the Second Amendment and concealed weapons. Open carry and all that. People used to open carry at the time. Hachamim say we're not in favor of that. Why? Because they quote a pasuk from Mishayahu, "V'chitetu harvotam leitim v'chanitotem lemazmirot, lo yisa goy el goy cherev, v'lo yomadu milchama." It's a famous pasuk that says that they will turn their swords into shovels and their spears into shears. And they will not raise a sword to each other, and they will not learn war anymore. So Rabbi says that it's not the ideal. War is not an ideal situation. It's a necessity sometimes. It's for self-defense. If you don't need it, you don't need it. That ties into the previous discussion of the sandala mesumar, the shoe with the sandal with the blade. In Mishnah, the Mishnah speaks about a different type of extensions to the hair. Chotei se'ar, ben mishela, ben mishel haverta, ben mishel behema. They used to take those extensions or hair to amplify, to make the hair look fuller with threads of hair, either her own. I mean, she cut her hair and made
extensions. That's what they do now.
Right, her own extension. Ben mishel haverta, or from another woman. Today they do it artificial. They do
real hair.
Some of them real hair. Okay.
Yeah, most of it is actually. Most of they have fake ones, but they have.
But that last one, I don't think they do today. Ben mishel behema, from an animal. They do. They still do that.
The difference between the animal hair.
They do horse hair.
You cannot change its color with a chemical.
Oh, you cannot dye it.
You cannot dye it. The natural hair you can.
Interesting.
The red one you can't.
So,
how about the wigs?
But they use. So wait. So don't say wig yet. They speak about chotei se'ar, and the interesting thing about that obviously observant people would ask, wait a second. So she weaves hair into her hair, but what does it matter? She covers her hair anyway, right? If all observant married women cover their hair, so what do I care if there's a woven hair under the scarf or the hair covering? And then the next thing, it says bechavul ubefi'ah nochrit lehatzer. She could go out to the courtyard, not to the public property, with pe'ah nochrit. Pe'ah nochrit, the way that the word is translated today, is a wig. Nochri means foreign or alien, and pe'ah is a corner. So it's like a piece of hair that you put. It's not yours. It's alien. It's foreign, and you put it on your hair. So she could go with it to the courtyard. What is it? This pe'ah nochrit, this wig. Rabbi Ovadia Bartenora says this: Isha she'en la rov se'ar, lokachat se'ar nashim אחרות ומשימה בראשה ונראה כאילו שערה. Says, who would use a wig? It's not used as a hair cover. It's women. It was used by women who didn't have much hair, had thin hair, so they would take hair from other women and add it to their hair to add volume. And here again, the same problem of, so what about hair covering? The Tosfot Yom Tov, it's Rabbi Yom Tov Heller from the 16th century, says this, Yesh Lomar, and he asks, why do you tell me that she could go to the courtyard? Why wasn't it mentioned before that she cannot go to the public domain? Because all the things in the Mishnah, they specified you're allowed to go here, you're not allowed to go there. Why don't they say that she's not allowed to go to the public domain? It says, Milta defshita u de'asur latzet b'reshut harabim, devadai mashlefei mishum dema'chu ala. Says it's obvious that she cannot take it to the public domain because she's going to take it off because people would laugh at her. And with all due respect, that shows a lack of understanding of what the whole purpose here, the way the Rabbi Ovadia Bartenura explains it. She does it in order to cover over her lack of hair. She would, if she's afraid of being mocked, she'll be mocked more if she takes it off than if she leaves it on. This just shows how problematic is this whole discussion with the halakha. One of the commentators, Rabbi Israel Lipschitz, asked this. Anyway, she wouldn't be able to go because she has to cover her hair. It comes from a different angle, right? She has to cover her hair. So he says she's only going to the courtyard. In the courtyard, even though there are people there, it's not the full presence of the multitudes of Reshut Harabim. But that tells us, again, here's where we have a problem, not about Shabbat, but about hair covering. An Orthodox woman today, the way the Orthodox community defines it, will not go out of her house without a hair covering. And in some cases, it even served as an argument for divorce. I remember that we've studied together the Teshuvah of Rabbi Yosef Misas, who says that it's not a problem at all because the whole idea of hair covering is the question of consensus, of what women consider to be modest or immodest. It says in the past, most women covered their hair. Not in a certain past. Not in the past of the Mishnah. At the time of the Mishnah, most women did not cover their hair. That's why we have this discussion. There is a discussion in the Talmud that they say that if a woman goes into the public domain with her hair disheveled, this is immodest. It doesn't say megule, uncovered, but disheveled, parua. That was considered an immodest behavior. And we see here in the Mishnah, even though the commentators tried to fit it into their worldview of where all women must cover their hair, you don't see it here. So we see that, like I said, that it suggests that women did not cover their hair, and we actually have another proof from the next Mishnah. Mishnah Vav says this: Yotzin besela sha'ala tzimnit, abanot yotzot bechutin v'afilu bekismin sheboznehem. This is just interesting detail that shows us how the culture of back then, that young girls could go out after their ears were pierced. They used to put a piece of thread through the piercing, so it doesn't close up, or sometimes a piece of wood, kismin, like a toothpick. So I don't think that Claire's does that today. They have like temporary Earrings. Right. Yeah, I just went through this with Sophia a while ago. But then the Mishnah says the following: Arviyot yotzot re'ulot umadiyot perufot v'chol adam ela shediberu chachamim bahove. He says Arviyot. What is Arviyot? Benot Israel shebe'Arvia. The Jewish women who live in Arabia. Arabia is Saudi Arabia. Back then it was not called Saudi Arabia. It was called just Arabia in general, or the Hijaz and so on. People lived there, and the rabbis were familiar with their practices, and they knew that they cover their face. The ra'ala, the veil. The veil had nothing to do with modesty. Maybe in some tribes it did, but in most of the places it was men and women who veiled themselves because of the sand. The Tuareg, until today, in the Sub-Sahara, in other places, are completely covered. You only see the eyes, both men and women. Later on, it was interpreted as a religious thing. So Hachamim said the women of Arabia, they understood that as something that only women do. They could go with the veil or with the scarf over their head, which means that all other women did not do that. If all women did that, they didn't have to specify it. And they say also umadiyot yotzot perufot. And by the same token, they say just as those women in Arabia could wear the scarf the way the non-Jewish women do, because that's what's fashionable over there, and it's not considered an excessive accessory on Shabbat. The women who live in Persia, madiyot, can go perufot. What is perufot? מתעצות בטלית ותולות רצועה בשפתה אחת כנגד צווארה. So it's just like a toga. Taking a robe or a big piece of fabric, wrapping it over yourself, and tying it over the shoulder. So instead of making a hole and stitching a button, the easiest way was called perifa. So take a little rock or a nut and wrap the fabric around it and tie it together, which I think we used to do as kids all the time when we wanted to fasten things to each other. This was our trick. She could even do it on a coin, but if she does it with the coin has to be tied into the fabric before Shabbat, because you're not allowed to touch the coin. But if the coin is already there, she could wear the robe with the coin in it on Shabbat. And there's no concern that she's going to open it or show it or anything. But what we see from here, first of all, that the rabbis were aware of the different practices and dress styles of women in different countries, and that only women in Arabia used to cover their hair. And Rashi also says that יוצאות רעולות דרך ערביות להיות מעוטפות ראשן ופניהם חוץ מן העיניים, וקרא לה בשון ערבי רעולות. So it says the Arabian women cover all their head and face except for the eyes. So that is the discussion of different types of hair covering. Mishnah Het speaks about people who have to carry had artificial legs. They had like the prosthetic, but their prosthetic was basically a piece of wood with a pouch of leather and a soft sort of pillow or something in it, cushion, so the stump could rest on it. So there is a mahloka whether he could take it on Shabbat or not. Then and this today some people argue with regarding a wheelchair and a walking stick. Are you allowed to take it on Shabbat or not? Where there is an eruv, there's no problem. When there's no eruv, some people would run into a difficulty of not being able to leave the house on Shabbat. So the answer to this is that a wheelchair is allowed to use. One is allowed to use even when there's no eruv, without relying on the psak of Rabbi Mishash that we don't need eruv today. A wheelchair is allowed not because it's a necessary thing, because people would argue that you could only do for medical reasons what is pikuach nefesh, to save one's life. And many would say, okay, so stay home on Shabbat, what can we do? But the thing is that even with this no Eruv, and even according to the Shulchan Aruch and Rabbinical Halacha, Gilgul, rolling something, is not considered Hotza'ah. So pushing a stroller or rolling a wheelchair is not called Tiltul or Hotza'ah.
How about electrical wheelchair?
So electric wheelchair is a different problem. That is up to the person who uses it, who feels how much, the use of electricity on in the way it is in the electric chair is rabbinical. It's not biblical. Rabbi David Shalush has a lengthy discussion of electricity on Shabbat. Electricity in general, Yom Tov and Shabbat. He comes to the conclusion that in order to define the use of electricity on Shabbat as biblical, as midoraita, it has to generate heat or create fire. That would make it doraita. If it does, and we're not talking about generating heat like the cell phone getting warmer when you use it. We're talking about heat that is so intense that could start a fire, and that doesn't happen with the electric wheelchair. So for the person who uses it, he can, that would be the consideration. It's sort of a rabbinical or even sub-rabbinical prohibition, and I want to decide whether to stay at home or not. So that's not a. If that person really feels that is going to be homebound, either he finds someone who does it for him, or you have him direct it, or I think that you could get today a Shabbat mode, which is done through a delay, meaning that when you press I think someone developed that when you press the switch, it doesn't activate it right away, but waits for a random pulse to go through it, and then it is activated. So once the initial activation is done by someone else, or by that act of delay, it is okay. I would say that the rabbi should get together and make a psak halacha, that for people who cannot be independent without that, since it's only a rabbinical decree, we will override it letzorich gadol, and we say that because for the need of feeling independent, feeling dignified, and being able to feel the full experience of Shabbat, going to the synagogue, etc., it will be lifted. But for that, you need a body of, we'd say, like a bedin that will sit and decide it, and not on individual ruling. The one more interesting halacha here: an katmin tehorin ve'en yotzin bahen. There's a debate in the Talmud what exactly is an katmin. It's a strange word. It's obviously a Greek word, and I'll read to you what Rabbi Ovadia Bartanura says. An katmin kamin partzuf adam meshuneh shemesimin al hapanim להרעיד בו את התינוקות. It's basically a huge mask that people would wear. He says to scare the children. So this is like the ancient Halloween. It's probably something that reflects the festivals, all the festivals and carnivals that are now still going on in Christian countries. It was not very common in Muslim countries, but in Christian countries, in Spain, in Germany, in France, and then it was carried on into South America. There are carnivals where people create huge masks, huge images, and they carry them in the streets. Probably the Greeks brought them with them to Eretz Israel. And the Hachamim say that you don't carry out on Shabbat. Probably they would have wanted to completely eliminate it, but they said at least on Shabbat, don't carry them. פירוש אחר, חמור שהליצנים עושים ונושאים אותו על כתפיהם. Sort of like the famous horse or donkey custom that two people put on their shoulders. It's good to know that he says that the clowns carry it on their shoulder. It's good to know that at the time of the Gemara or the Mishnah, they also had entertainment. You don't think that they were either working all day or studying Torah all day. They had their own form of entertainment. Finally, Mishnah Yud is disturbing or problematic on a different level, and that is Yotz'in bevetzat hargol ובשן של שועל, ובמסמר מן הצלוב משום רפואה, דברי רבי מאיר. Rabbi Meir says there are certain items that you're allowed to carry on Shabbat because they can heal you. What are those things? ביצת החרגול, eggs of grasshoppers. I don't know how you could collect eggs from grasshoppers. It would be extremely big, kind of grasshopper, and you have to be really.
How can you see them?
No, I guess you could see it's probably like the size of little. When you see like bugs, something like anthill, you could see that.
It's smaller than a sesame seed.
Yeah, something like that. Beshen shel shu'al, and a tooth from a fox. Ubemasmer min hatzaluv, and a nail that was removed from a crucifix. The people were crucified by the Romans at the pace of about 2,000 people a year. We know that was very common in Eretz Yisrael. The Romans were very, very cruel and ruthless was they did not tolerate any opposition. And the way to tell people don't mess with us was to put crosses all over the land and crucify people. Jesus was only one of the people crucified. Every year there were thousands. And people thought that if you take a nail from the tree and you carry it on you, it's some kind of protection. Maybe because they thought it already went through all the death and suffering possible, so that is now is going to fend them off from me. So Rabbi Meir says you could do it, but the Hachamim say afiblu b'chol asur. No, you cannot do it even on a regular day, mishum dachei amori, because this is not the Jewish way. Interestingly enough, later on in our history, people did a lot of things like that they borrowed from the non-Jews. There's even a teshuvah of the Ben Ish Hai that someone sent me recently. The Ben Ish Hai says that people used to do it at the house of someone who's sick or the house of a newborn baby to take a skewer or a knife and put on it 7 onions and wrap it with a purple piece of fabric. And people asked him, is this like this Mishnah, Dachei Mori, can we do it, can we not? And the Ben Ish Hai, who's usually very logical posek, says, no, I can explain that, and he explains by Kabbalistic numbers and colors according to the Zohar, and he says there's room for them to say it. It seems that he defends the minhag because he knew he could not completely abolish it. On the other hand, I know that my great-grandfather, Rabbi Yehuda Fetaya, when he was in Baghdad, the women used to create some kind of a potion from water and salt and adding some other elements, and pour it in the courtyard when there was someone sick in the house, and they would say all kind of incantations, not Hebrew or Jewish words. And he promised them. He said he actually fought against it. And he promised them, he says, anyone who is sick in your household, come to me, I'll pray for them, and they will heal, and stop doing that. And they stopped doing that. I don't know if everybody was healed, but I think they were better off coming to him for prayers than doing these things, but it was still pervasive throughout our history in all Jewish communities. Baruch Adonai, la'olam, amen, amen.